Welcome back, everyone, to the It's Official podcast. He's Jeff Siegel. I'm Jeremy Plonk. In my past performance lines, there's a line across the top of the PPs. I'm coming off the layoff. We were off last week for vacation, Jeff, but we fire fresh off the layoff. You can look at the stats. We're going to come at it strong this week with a little break.
Yeah, you had the layoff. I had a bye. Officially, I had a bye, and I kind of enjoyed it, refreshed a little bit, and enjoyed Royal Ascot very much. And I liked it for a couple of reasons. First of all, they had firm ground throughout the week, which means I can relate to the results because, when they go on a bye, that doesn't mean anything as far as I'm concerned. And the other thing is the trainers who generally will bring horses to the Breeders' Cup won races. Aidan O'Brien. So a lot of these horses that we saw here run last week are viable candidates to come over. And the more international runners we get, the better the race meet is. The 2-day festival out here at Del Mar will be. So I think it worked out really well. And we saw some incredibly good young racehorses, and God knows what they will be down the road. But hopefully we'll get our share out here in California for the Breeders' Cup.
We'll give you a recap of the Royal Ascot races as part of our 5 hot topics that are on the board each and every week. Also want to remind you that it is Stephen Foster week at Churchill Downs. They've already drawn the field, First Mission, the expected favorite to go in that one on Saturday night. Big weekend at Woodbine, multiple stakes there, including the Marine Stakes, a big prep towards the King's Plate. And, of course, if you're a harness fan, first leg of the Pacing Triple Crown, the Messenger this weekend. So we've got a lot going on, but we review races here on It's Official, so let's get to it. Our first of 5 topics this week, we're going to talk about turning out the lights. If you've ever had a child and you had to tuck them in at night, maybe you talked about fairy godmothers or bedtime stories. Those were 2 aptly named fillies who put on a show at Royal Ascot over the weekend, over the last week. Let's go first to Bedtime Story in the Group 2 Chesham Stakes. She ran them off their feet. She beat the boys in this one and did it in just laughing style.
Mile marker and now running beyond halfway. Motawahij with Moon Sniper poised just in behind his Bedtime Story. Still there is Duke of Monroth. Expensive Rose. Age of Gold is driven. Metro Dubai the near side. Miss El Fundy trying to work into it. The extreme right Lazy Griff as the field are about to run inside the 2. Bedtime Story now challenging Motawahij. Then Expensive Rose and Defense Missile. But taking over here it's Bedtime Story and she's opened up by 3. Bedtime Story running towards the last furlong. Oh, good night. Bedtime Story. She's opened up by about 7 or 8 here. They're playing for places in behind, but Chapter 2 for Bedtime Story is a resounding win in the Chesham Stakes. A brilliant performance. Through for second,
7 furlongs, wins by 9.5 lengths. You don't see that often overseas. You don't see it often at that trip. She put it all together, Jeff. Sensational. Maybe the performance of the meeting.
No doubt about it, because in looking at this race, what's scary about the whole thing is that she's by Frankel. She's starting just to get warm up. She's a 2-year-old filly, winning going 7/8 of a mile by Frankel, and she's just getting started. She had run 16 days prior to this, and she won by, I don't know, half length, whatever it was. But then she never even had to try that day. They didn't want a hard race coming back in 2 weeks. So because of that, it was really unknown as to how good she was, and we saw it. And now it's just a matter of what they want to do with her. They obviously being Aidan O'Brien, and it would be lovely to bring her out here and run it in the Breeders' Cup. Who knows what's going to happen in November? But the other thing is, traditionally, this barn, this stable will bring horses. They just don't bring their very best. They don't want to, the 1-turn mile of the Guineas next year. And then if they were to come out here, it really wouldn't have that impact in terms of proving anything. But he'll bring, even his 4th and 5th stringers are good. So, but I mean, this is a Guineas filly and probably an Oaks filly as well if she stays healthy. I don't remember seeing an acceleration like that from a 2-year-old filly this time of the year. So I just was over. Well, everybody else was too. It was breathtaking. It was amazing, and to my way of thinking, it was the premier performance of the entire 5-day meeting.
So we moved that up on our list. Also with the 2-year-old fillies, it was Fairy Godmother the day before on Friday at Royal Ascot. She kind of threw down the gauntlet that she had a turn of foot for these Coolmore boys that looked like she might be the tops of their 2-year-old fillies. That lasted about 24 hours, as you mentioned to me. Let's go back and look at Fairy Godmother's win. This comes in the Albany Stakes on Friday from Royal Ascot.
Heaven's Gate in front here. Mountain Breeze is giving chase. Here comes Simmering on the right-hand side. Blue Sleeves beginning to stay on strongly. Heaven's Gate inside the last furlong. Now Fairy Godmother has found daylight. She's beginning to fly and is coming right over the top. Fairy Godmother with a withering run gets through to score, and it's Moore and O'Brien again from Simmering and Heaven's Gate.
Fairy Godmother with that turn of foot. You'd love to see that over a short crop turf course out there at Del Mar, Jeff. That kind of daisy cutter action like that, she could be really effective if they want to come out here. Breeders' Cup, Juvenile Fillies Turf. Maybe she's the one who's second best in the stable, but the one we might see for the Breeders' Cup.
Well, you might think so because you've got two fillies who never breezed at home, as they say. I mean, they never matched them up. Before the races on Friday, they didn't really know which was the better of the two. And after that, the bookmakers actually made Fairy Godmother the favorite for the Guineas next year. I don't remember what price she was listed, but she was the favorite. And then the next filly came around the next day and Bedtime Story, and they said, "Wait a minute, let's change this now." So her glory lasted one day after that amazing win. But you're right. I mean, this is a filly that probably is bred to run a little shorter than the other one, and so they'll probably, maybe look for this filly to come out. And as you pointed out, what a mover, what an acceleration, and on firm ground. That's why I can trust the form, because it was firm ground. She's done that on heavy ground, and who knows what you're going to get. But two outstanding, more than outstanding, I mean, potentially superstar fillies winning that over the weekend. And I'm just excited to watch them, and you want to see champions wherever they are. And I think Ade has got two potential types right here, and we'll see what happens.
Bedtime Story, Fairy Godmother. Don't forget, last year it was Aesop's Fables coming over here to run third in the Breeders' Cup Turf Sprint behind No Balls and Company for the same connection. So maybe the storybook ending will come at Del Mar a little bit later in the year. All right, all the puns aside, as we go to our second topic, it was an amazing week for Aidan O'Brien. You've already seen two of his victories. He ended up with 6 overall. We'll talk about each of those in just a little bit. But the big headliner came in the Prince of Wales' Stakes, the Grade 1, and he's enigmatic, but when he's on, he's on. He's the fierceness of England and Ireland. Auguste Rodin and the Princess of Wales, he got back on the beam.
Furlong and a half left to go. Horizon Doré from off the pace. Widest of all is being delivered late, but it's Auguste Rodin in front as they come inside the furlong. Horizon Doré challenging. Zarakem in the emerald green trying to thread the eye of the needle. Auguste Rodin from Horizon Doré and Zarakem, and it's Auguste Rodin who wins the Prince of Wales' Stakes. Zarakem was up for second, Horizon Doré, and third close for fourth between Royal Rhyme and Alflela, and in spiral midfield, never threatened.
Yeah, the disappointment there in Spiral, the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Turf winner from last year. She didn't fire at all. We've seen non-firing efforts out of the winner in the past. Auguste Rodin, though, he was on last week, Jeff. Is he going to come back for another Breeders' Cup Turf? Does he come over for the Classic? He's got the world in front of him now if he's back on his good side.
I think that depends on what some of the other colts that could be Breeders' Cup Classic type runners would be, and from over there and then from the stable. Last year they figured that they'd try him on dirt. Next year they wanted to get a Breeders' Cup win, and when he got that, but now with other horses in the division and in the barn that could come, I think they would probably keep him on firm ground, and which is why he's definitely a Breeders' Cup type horse. They know they'll get firm ground here in the fall and overseas. They don't know what they're going to get, but he looked terrific here. He looked like the same colt that won the Breeders' Cup Turf last year. Now he's throwing some clunkers in the middle, and you never know what you're going to get. But if that version shows up at Del Mar, he is going to be very hard to beat, and he earned a career top racing post number in that race. So that was, at least on their rating system, whatever they used to make it, was the best race of his career numbers wise. So that was a terrific performance, and I was glad to see him come back. And again, the more Aidan O'Brien runners run well, the more likely we'll see him out here in California, which is always a treat. I mean, between him and Godolphin and what they'll bring, I mean, it's going to be tough for the locals, I can tell you that.
Right.
Everything shakes out like we hope it will.
We didn't see City of Troy at Royal Ascot, but he's the one you mentioned who could be coming here for the Classic. He's the 3-year-old winner of the Derby over there, the Epsom Derby. He could be headed towards the Breeders' Cup Classic for these same connections. So they have an absolute chest full of riches with their runners going right now. Another one of the Aidan O'Brien and Coolmore runners, a veteran who is back in the game in the Ascot Gold Cup. I want to say the Dubai Gold Cup, but of course Ascot, the Ascot Gold Cup in here. Kyprios, he's a horse who a couple years ago was in this race. He's had his injury problems, and he was kind of a sentimental comeback story, but he came back running. Let's take a look at his return victory in the Ascot Gold Cup.
Ryan Moore says go on Kyprios, and Kyprios puts his nose in front. Trawlerman is nothing if not game on the far side, however, and is fighting back. Kyprios near side of Trawlerman, the old rivals. Kyprios just in front from Trawlerman. They race up towards the line, and Kyprios will regain the Gold Cup. Kyprios wins from Trawlerman in second. Sweet William running on into third from Vauban in fourth. Then Coltrane. And back in the field, Keys Chorister, Gregory, Enum.
So Kyprios back in the winner's circle. Jeff, it's good to see these veterans who were able to kind of get a second act, if you will, on his career.
Son of Galileo, a full horse, by the way. But he was brilliant a couple of years ago and was 6 for 6, and then got beat in a couple of races and suffered an injury in the fetlock, and it became infected. They were certain he would never run again. In fact, they thought that he might not even live. And here he is coming back and winning the Ascot Gold Cup. The story is amazing. It may not mean much to the Americans that we don't follow that level, that class of level, the marathon stayer type horses. But over there, you talk about being popular. You know, it'd be like in California if the Chosen Vaughn came back in 2 years and won or something, like that. Right. You know, and he's a very, very good horse, obviously. And this race, by the way, I know it's been run a few times. I didn't realize that it first was run in, I'm checking my notes here, 1807. This race.
That goes back.
So the Ascot Gold Cup, one of the, I can't imagine any race of record being older, you know.
Right.
But anyway, so that was a maybe the highlight for the fans over there. And I don't know what that this horse is going to do. I mean, there's really no race out here for him, but maybe I don't know. Even 1.5 miles in the Melbourne Cup, if they were to go, that's 2 miles actually. That could be a race for him if they wanted. I guess. Anyway, but it was exciting for him to see, and the fact that he was able to reach back and find extra in the final 16th of a mile. This horse has won like something like 11 out of 15, I think it is. But anyway. Good to see him win, and a great training job there to get him back in top class form.
You mentioning 1807 with this race going back in such a history. It reminds me of a cartoon that Remy Belloc drew for Horse Player magazine when I was the editor back in the mid-2000s. And Remy, of course, the son of Peb Belloc, Peb of DRF fame. He drew a cartoon where an American track superintendent standing next to an English track superintendent who's watering the grass. And he said, how do we get turf like this in America? He said, water it and wait 250 years. Basically, the history going back on some of these courses in England. What a week it was for Aidan O'Brien. We mentioned this. 6 winners overall on the 5-day stand at Royal Ascot. A lot of 6-packs probably were drank off track. Nobody on track is drinking a 6-pack. It's all champagne and heavy booze and all the rumbles that go on. 250,000 plus attended the races and got revelrous at Royal Ascot. But these 6 winners over the 5 days, unbelievable. 2 Grade Group 1s, 4 Group 2 races. We saw 4 of those off the top. Illinois also won the Queen's Vase, and then Port Fairy won the Ribblesdale Stakes. So what a great week for Aidan O'Brien. Of course, His stable is absolutely loaded. Some others, not so much of a great week when we talk about Royal Ascot. Charlie Appleby sent 6, which is a little bit low for the Godolphin numbers. 6 starters for the week. None of them landed in the top 4. I think his best finish was 5th or 6th place. So Charlie Appleby's not the tap past couple years, and certainly his Royal Ascot was disappointing. One note we want to make: the Americans, Wesley Ward basically whiffed on what he had sent over there. We do want to give a shout out to Gabaldon, though, for Jose D'Angelo, who ran a good second in the Windsor Castle Stakes. That's the second year in a row a horse out of that Royal Palm Series at Gulfstream Park went over and ran really well. Crimson Advocate won last year for George Weaver, going from Gulfstream over to Royal Ascot, and now this year Gabaldon ran a good second for Jose D'Angelo. So that series at Gulfstream has been a real plus over the past few years. So a shout out there, but not a good year overall for the Americans by far overall, and not a good year at all for Charlie Appleby at Royal Ascot.
Well, serves Charlie right. He should be racing all of his stock here in the state.
Well, a lot of them are now. You know, he's got a whole outpost sent here for the summer.
It's a little bit concerning because Wesley, you remember he started out, I think it was like 14, 15 years ago when we first started doing this, and won a lot of races, something like 12 or something. But the last 5 or 6 years has been a total disaster for him. And I think, you know, like he ran some 2-year-olds over there that actually I had watched at Keeneland thinking that they might be competitive, and they were not. I don't know. It's maybe it's just a bad streak, or maybe there's something else going on that I don't know. But look, these Europeans, they come over here and they usually kick our butt. Okay. Right. They're on the road. That's a visitor's game. Okay. Now we're going back to playing at their place. What kind of chance do we normally, you know, sometimes they run well, but it's tough to do. You better bring the right horse, or you're wasting a lot of money and a lot of time. Mr. Cut, for example, a good California horse. He'd won at Royal Ascot 2 years ago. And he'd coming off a couple of wins. I know we don't have the greatest turf horses in California, but he was dead last. Got beat 30 lengths. I mean, it just boggles the mind, really.
A lot of time between now and November for the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar, but you got to like Gabaldon's chances coming out of those Gulfstream races for D'Angelo. Sure. Short crop turf course at Gulfstream, handled that really well in the debut. He gets that at Del Mar. He's got to be one you're looking at for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint coming up in November. Knock on wood, everybody stays healthy. And these horses progress, right? Because some of them are just early developers in those May, June, April kind of races. Hit a lot differently than the ones do come October, and some of the other horses start to come around and develop. That's a wrap for Royal Ascot for 2024 here on the program. So we go to our third topic now, and patience pays off. Trainer Bill Mott was going to run Batten Down in the Belmont Stakes a couple weeks ago. They decided to pass on that one and await the Ohio Derby. Batten Down didn't wait on the competition, though. He took the lead one stride out of the gate. He looked like a winner under the wire the first time around. When they came around the second time, he was still there.
Top of the stretch, and it's Batten Down, a length and a half in front. Catching Freedom comes under a drive. Gould's Gold and Catching Freedom come together there. They're chasing Batten Down. 1 furlong to go. Batten Down with the lead. Catching Freedom trying to catch him. Gould's Gold still with a chance, and Copper Tax with late run. But Batten Down is still in front. Batten Down, wire to wire in the Ohio Derby.
Jeff, rarely do you call ball game coming right out of the gate unless it's a quarter horse race or maybe a 4.5 furlonger at Keeneland. But this horse, like 3 jumps out of the gate, was 2 in front under an absolute hammerlock, and Batten Down just looked ready to go from Jump Street, and he ran his race. He got his signature win, stepping up into Stakes Company in a $500,000 race. This was a well-placed spot by Bill Mott, and he got a good performance out of his colt.
We really shouldn't have to compliment Bill Mott about how to campaign a horse. He's done it before a few times. Right. But I'm going to compliment him anyway, because this is the kind of 3-year-old that, you know, at first he considered running in the Belmont following a maiden win. And I understand why he felt that way, because he was a sharp, improving stayer. He could go a mile and a quarter. But he said, wait a minute. He says, I'd love to be in there. And I think maybe eventually he'd be that good. But what am I thinking? You know, I'm not going to throw him with the wolves. They just want to make race. Let's do this. Let's walk up the stair, 1 stair at a time, you know. So he runs in this race, which was still a $500,000 race following a maiden win. But it wasn't the strongest race on the paper. And he made the lead, but he didn't go slow. I mean, he went out there 22-4, 46-4. I mean, it wasn't like he was going 49, which is what he had done in his maiden race.
Yeah.
He definitely improved. He was never going to lose. He never changed leads, which kind of surprised me.
Right.
Because he looked like a colt that wouldn't be an issue with. He might have gotten bored out there. There was no competition. Nobody ran with him. He wasn't knocked about. So now here's a horse that a different barn would say, why don't you just run him back, in the Haskell or somewhere else, Travers, And you know where he's running? He's probably going to run into Jim Dandy, which is the next step up the ladder without getting to the top of the ladder.
Right.
And he figures this colt probably needs more time before being completely thrown to the best in the division. Although some would say that Catching Freedom was very close to that, and he was not among the also-rans here. So he's close. But I think he needs one more race against the lesser of the division before he's ready. He's a beautiful colt. He's otherwise, even though he didn't change leads, he's a good mover. Just acted so professionally on the racetrack. Obviously, the pedigree's there. Tapit out of Closed Hatches, champion mare, and already a fantastic producer. So he's the kind of colt that second half of the year, I don't think he's there yet, but he's getting close. And one more step forward, one more improvement, and he's right there. He could be right there with the rest of those.
His big brother Tacit has made a lot of money and was in a lot of big races. He didn't step down in class like this, like I remember, to go to a race like the Ohio Derby, or he may have changed his reputation a little bit. Sometimes getting a win can do a lot for a horse's confidence, or maybe that's just humans putting that quality onto horses. But I think this is a good race for Batten Down moving forward. Right. I mean, he's going to stay separate from, his stablemate, Resilience, the winner of the Wood Memorial. And of course, Mott ran Resilience in the Belmont Stakes. So he's got one probably for the Jim Dandy, one for the Haskell, if they're both doing well coming up here in a couple months' time. How about Catching Freedom? Let's talk about him for just a second. He started the year in the Smarty Jones down at Oaklawn, like right around New Year's, right off the bat. He had a tough campaign in that the Louisiana Derby is 1 mile and 3/16. He had the longest of the prep races. He ran well in the Derby. Brad Cox ran him right back in the Preakness, which he normally doesn't do. Cox rarely runs a horse Derby and Preakness. And now he was flat in this particular race. Does a horse like that need time off or just some normal timing and he'll get back in the game? What do you want to do if you've got Catching Freedom, Jeff?
I think he's showing the effects of a tough winter campaign. He had 2 hard races in a row in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. And sometimes, I saw this with my own eyes with Sunday Silence, as great as he was. He ran in the Triple Crown, and then he came back and ran at Hollywood Park in the Swap Stakes. He needed that. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know. I think Charlie had a lack of respect for the competition. He figured, I'm going to breeze him anyway. Might as well put him in that race, which was, as I recall, and I really should recall it because our horse won the race and prize. But as I recollected, it was like a mid-July, something like that. Right. He should have, So if it can knock out, if that kind of campaign can knock out a horse like Sunday Silence, it certainly can do it to a lesser horse. And I think Catching Freedom could use a breather now. I mean, what's the point at this stage? You mentioned how flat he was. I thought he would be flat in the race. I really did. And you could see he was going nowhere into the backstretch. He was outside, but he was struggling. And I looked back to see what the competition was, couldn't find one. Batten Down went off at 3-1 in this race. And I wanted to point this out because he was like less than that. He was like 2-1, 5-2, 2-1. And then in the gate, I don't know where the money went. Well, I know where it went with the Catching Freedom because he ended up going 2-5. And he was not 2-5 going into the gate. So Batten Down turned out to be a good gamble. But I like him. I don't think he's there yet. I think mentally he's got a little ways to go, but I think in 2-3 months he might be among the very best in the division if he isn't already.
All right, we've got a lot to look forward with the 3-year-olds. We've talked a lot about them so far on the campaign this year. But like we said, we got the Haskell, the Jim Dandy, the Pennsylvania Derby. Still a lot of big chances for the top-level horses. You got races like the Oklahoma Derby, West Virginia Derby, Indiana. Still a lot for those mid-tier horses. So if they don't want to rise to the top with Batten Down, they've got plenty of money they can make staying in the sophomore class throughout the course of the season. Let's go to another topic. It might feel like we've repeated this topic, and we're going to talk about the stewards at Churchill Downs. Those Churchill stewards, again. Now, I was away last week, so I didn't see the initial hubbub to all this stuff on Saturday. But Here we are banging down the lane again at Churchill Downs. It was 2 stars. Society for Steve Asmussen, Vava for Cherie DeVille in the Chicago Stakes. Churchill Downs, 2 horses leaning all over each other coming down the stretch.
Top of the stretch, Society rolls off the turn with Vava right alongside second, and these two set down for the drive together. Vava comes up alongside of Society. Society and Vava, they're shoulder to shoulder, brushing right outside the 8th pole. Vava's in front now. Society's back into second. Vava trying to get in a bit. In the meantime, Positano Sunset's coming down the center, but here's the wire, and it's Vava.
Track announcer Travis Stone there basically flipped the switch for the stewards for the inquiry sign for them, but they didn't bother lighting it, Jeff. We've seen this before.
I think Travis was tempting to say this could be an inquiry, but it's Churchill, so there won't be one.
Right.
You could have fit that in like 70 yards from the wire, But again, it's the same situation we saw in the Derby. Mm-hmm. Here, Vava is on the outside. Even Travis said she's leaning in, causing the interference. The head-on proved that. Bumping, doing this, just like we saw in the Derby. They didn't hang one there in the Derby. And here, no inquiry, no foul came. And here's the difference. The second filly, the third filly, Society, who was solid second choice behind the 2-5 favorite Vava, and I'm sure that the majority of the exactas were keyed to her in the 2-hole. She blew second money because she clearly got fouled. Mm-hmm. So there again, it would have been a shame if Vava was disqualified for causing interference because she was clearly the best filly, but she clearly cost Society the second place. And even if you conclude that she didn't, you still have to put the inquiry sign up. Right. Just to prove to people, hey, we're on this. Okay, we might not take her down, but we're looking at it. But to just ignore it, people say, "What are they? Are they clueless? Well, maybe they are, but I don't know. I mean, it's just the Churchills. I called for their firing after the Derby, so and I didn't think they would get fired up, but I thought this one might push them to the edge, but nothing shows up.
They didn't learn from the Derby and the outcry from it. That's obvious.
Yeah.
Let's talk just a second about this kind of situation that we see. The horse who is fouled ends up running third. Had the horse run second and could be put up with the objection, you're more likely to see the jockey object at that point. The jockey necessarily from third to second, there are a lot of times they're not going to make that call. You can upset other owners. You upset the jock room. Like there's not that big of a deal to them to go from third to second for the rider in this particular case. So you can see why they're not objecting. To me, that's where the steward has to step in and protect the bettor, because who's got the bettor's back, right? The jock can make a decision. The trainer can make a decision. Do we want to claim foul? Do we want to leave it go? They can take all the political decisions in their mind of how they want to handle it and choose to do what they want. That's their right on whether they object or not. But nobody's got the players back except the stewards. And the stewards have got to have the players back in this particular case. Because like you mentioned, this is favorite second choice. There are a ton of exactas. All of the exactas in terms of, being the favorite are running through, a lot of these exactas are running through that combination that was taken down. I'm adamant about this. I think the players are far more important than the placings. And I think in these kind of situations, you have to make a DQ that's going to affect any wager. And I'm talking top 4. If the same thing happens and the horse ends up third and fourth in here, but it screws up the superfecta, you got to make the call to me. I just really feel that way. And it's not about, we took the best horse down, the horse who was best. This is a gambling game, man. This isn't a horse show. If it's a horse show in gymnastics, they'd run around and we give them a score. But we're gambling on this game, and that's what makes everything fuel. I think if it affects a top 4 finish in a superfecta, I think when there's money gambled on it, that the bettors have to be protected first. And if that upsets horsemen, and it will upset some people who lose a winning ticket, right? You're taking the favorite down, Vava, and taking her off the top. So there are going to be a lot of people upset that she came down off the win spot. But to me, you got to protect all the wagers, not just some of them, not just the one that looks most popular and leaving the favorite up as the winner in a spot like this. And secondly, like you mentioned, at least look at it and give us the air that you're interested in trying to make an adjudicated decision.
In this race, I mean, like I say, it would have been a shame if Vava had to be disqualified. But you can, and if she had done that, and Society had faded out of the picture and run a well beaten third, okay, you leave it up there because maybe you can use the idea that okay, we saw it, there was a bump. We don't think honestly that it affected the order of finish. This race was a race that was there was a net margin of victory here, and the problem is that, as you pointed out, the horse that ran second was 17-1, and the horse that was third now, Society, was 2-1. There's no doubt in my mind that if there was no bumping, then she would have been second. It wasn't like, oh, I don't think she was second best. Of course she was.
Yeah.
So and then the other problem is that as horse players who play all kinds of different racetracks and different venues, there's no consistency. Forget about being consistency at your track. What about consistency around the country? There's no general rule. Everybody does what they have their own rules they follow. Right. So,
look, they'll take the winner of the Kentucky Derby down to appease the 17th place finisher, long range.
Yeah.
So hey, just give us some consistency, right? I mean, like if it affected the outcome of the race 3 furlongs from the wire, then let's talk about these ones in the final 8 that cost horses getting second money in a stakes race, no less, not just a regular overnight race. So significant to me. And I just want to see some consistency. Consistency is what we do on the show here. We wrap it up with our stars of tomorrow, our 5th and final topic, just about every single week. And our star of tomorrow, Wesley Ward, may not have had a big Royal Ascot this year, but he's got a 2-year-old that he unveiled in New York over the weekend that you might want to keep your eye on.
Here comes War Warrior, who's ready to pounce, and War Warrior with a charge down the center of the course. Also at the rail, West Beach is going to find some room, is trying to bull on through, but Pharaoh's Dynasty is still there, and Pharaoh's Dynasty is kicked on now. Pharaoh's Dynasty is up by 2. It's Pharaoh's Dynasty sprinting away. West Beach, the only one within range. Pharaoh's Dynasty almost there. Pharaoh's Dynasty wins it. Pharaoh's Dynasty over West Beach. Then came Pivotal Moment. Then a photo due with War Warrior.
So Pharaoh's Dynasty, all these American Pharaohs just seem to be a little bit better on grass, Jeff. And this is another one for Wesley Ward.
A lot of people bred to him thinking they wanted to get another American Pharaoh, but they're not getting another American Pharaoh. They're getting a grass version. Find a good grass sire, and then that's what the American Pharaoh has come. This colt, though, is a full brother to Four Wheel Drive, who was so fast back a few years back and won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. There was another horse that the mare produced named Born Great, a Scat Daddy gelding. He broke the track record and won stakes at where is it? Kentucky, in the Kentucky Downs. Right. So the pedigree is there for this horse to be a top grass runner, which he won this race, 108-4. But here's the thing, Jeremy. He won it on the lead, but he didn't blast off. I mean, he went the first half in 46, came home in 22-4. Which leads me to believe that maybe if you put this horse on the lead going along, he'll just keep going. So this is a colt that could be a Breeders' Cup Juvenile type of horse. Pedigree-wise, Wesley Ward type of horse, fast win in his maiden race. I like him. I think he's got a future. And unfortunately for the connections who want to get another American Pharaoh type horse, this horse is going to be a grass horse. Don't count on him doing anything on dirt. And he probably won't even be asked to do that. But down the road, there are stakes races. I think there's a race towards the end of Saratoga meeting. The races on grass, races up in Canada, and then of course Kentucky Downs as well. So Wesley's got a lot of opportunities. But I think it all will culminate on Breeders' Cup Day if he remains or improves and continues on like we just saw in his first race.
Four Wheel Drive, his brother for Wesley Ward, went through the Colonial Downs route, I recall, back before he won the Juvenile Turf Sprint. So they've got some races down that way he can go to. So they've got some options here if they want to go with Pharaoh's Dynasty. Put that one down on your horses to watch this week's Stars of Tomorrow. So our 5 topics this week are all up and all down. We turn out the lights on Fairy Godmother and Bedtime Story. 2 impressive 2-year-old fillies at Royal Ascot for Aidan O'Brien. Aidan O'Brien's amazing week included 6 wins at Royal Ascot overall, including Auguste Rodin in the Prince of Wales' stakes and Kyprios winning the Ascot Gold Cup. 6 wins for Aidan O'Brien this year at Royal Ascot. The patience paid off for Bill Mott. They stepped aside from the Belmont Stakes with batten down and waited for the Ohio Derby. He took that one wire to wire in sharp style. The Churchill Stewards were at it again as Vava and Society were brushing rubber and rubbing tires in the Chicago Stakes down the lane, but no inquiry there, no change. Vava the winner. And our star of tomorrow, Pharaoh's Dynasty, a winner June 23rd at Belmont at the Big A, the brother to four-wheel drive Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf Sprint winner. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff Siegel and I said so. That's how we play the game just about each and every week. Last week, we didn't play the game because we mentioned that we were on vacation. I don't like to put out vacation picks, but the third member of our broadcast team here on It's Official each and every week, Graham the dog, he enjoyed the trip to the beach and want to share some of the spots there. The one on the left, if the wind hits you in the face and you love it that much, I just say ride the breeze. And Graham had a great time last week. I know Jeff loves hearing him on the podcast. He's out of the office this morning, so he's not in the office and not barking for us on the show today. But I think he's tired and taking a nap, Jeff. He had a long drive all the way to South Carolina and back, and a great time at the beach. So I know people love their dogs, and I certainly love mine. You're not getting any pictures of me on the beach. You don't want to see that, but you will get a picture of Graham.
I imagine Graham was probably thinking, I didn't think Del Mar started in 3 more weeks. Where am I? I mean, there's an ocean. I know that Del Mar's on the beach. Maybe that's where I am. But
he was looking east. He needs to look the other direction. That would be a long car ride.
No. He'd take a flight. He wouldn't be. So. Anyway, well, I'm glad you had a good time. You deserved it. It's a good time to have a vacation halfway through the year and down there where you are. And I don't know about where you are now in terms of what the weather is. Here it's like 97, so I'm frying out here in California. But I can't wait for Del Mar because I checked the weather not last year, but a couple of years back, and it's traditionally 20 degrees cooler at Del Mar than it is up here in LA. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time at Del Mar. I promise you.
Well, good. I look forward to seeing you down there and getting all your work with Express Bet and First Bet from Del Mar coming up in a couple weeks. This weekend, Stephen Foster at Churchill Downs. Be sure to check that out. We're going to have some special coverage on our website. Scott Shapiro is going to have some handicapping for you on Stephen Foster weekend for First Bet and Express Bet. Be sure to check that out later in the week. And again, big stakes day at Woodbine coming up on Saturday, and the Messenger Stakes kicking off the Pacing Triple Crown in the Harness Land coming up this weekend. Jeff and I will be back on Friday to do our handicapping podcast. It's called First Call. Be sure to check that out Friday afternoon each and every week. We appreciate you watching the It's Official podcast. On behalf of everybody with First Technologies and my partner Jeff Siegel, I'm Jeremy Plonk. And from Graham the dog, have a great week. We'll talk to you on Friday.